The governments of the world have been seduced in many ways. They have made contracts with the intervention, which the intervention has violated. And now there are those within the governments of the world who are aware of the intervention and who support it. And there are those who are aware of it and who oppose it. So the seeds of conflict and opposition have been sown within the corridors of power within your nation's governments, many of them. The intervention is being carried out by physical beings who are driven by the same needs that drive humanity: the need for resources, the need for power, the need for wealth, and the need for strategic advantage. It is these very things that drive all nations in the universe. You must not regard these beings as evil or demonic or as angelic. They are beings driven by the same needs that drive humanity. It is important now that we address the question of how the intervention is functioning within the context of the three primary requirements that humanity must meet and must utilize in order to become a free race in the universe. The intervention does not value freedom. It is unknown among participants. It will therefore seek to oppose or undermine any progress that humanity will attempt to make regarding these three fundamental requirements. Human unity will be opposed because a unified human family will be very difficult to influence. Human conflict can be so easily antagonized, increased, and directed. The intervention does not want to see humanity unite in facing the greater community. Therefore, human conflict will be encouraged, particularly by those hybridized individuals who have assumed positions in advising human leaders. It is their advising roles that have the most influence here. These are not individuals that you will see, for they are not public, they are hidden and well placed. However, they have their opponents within governments. For there is a struggle going on within the secret corridors of government, and that is why the intervention has sought to influence commercial powers even more than government officials. For commercial powers are governed by greed. They seek wealth, power, predominance, and advantage over their rivals. They do not have public scrutiny and are not accountable to people at large, and so they are much more likely candidates for the plan of the intervention to gain human representatives and human liaisons. Human unity will be opposed by the intervention, for a united humanity will oppose intervention. It will become increasingly resistant to any attempt by any foreign power to gain access or advantage here. That is why the emphasis for the intervention is to amplify human crises, human conflicts, human disagreements, and to encourage the proliferation of weapons, to lead humanity further in its own self-determined path of destruction. A weakened humanity will be vulnerable to persuasion, and a weakened humanity will be more likely to respond to offers of technology, to offers of assistance in governance, and to offers of becoming connected to trade networks that already exist in the universe. If humanity declines, it will be hard for either your leaders or your peoples to turn down offers of technology and resources that will be provided for you, offers that will surely undermine your self-determination and make you dependent upon networks of trade, commerce, and power over which you will have no influence or control. These activities are not evil in the sense that you might think. They represent competition, and competition is part of nature. If you are to be powerful, others will compete with you. If you possess wealth, others will compete with you for this wealth. If you misuse the world, others will seek to take advantage of this for themselves. And if you remain divided, others will try to use that to their advantage. Regarding resource depletion, the intervention will support the overuse of those resources that you rely upon for your basic energy requirements, for they do not need these resources. The depletion of these resources will further hasten humanity's conflicts and decline. Therefore, the overuse of such resources and people's desire to maintain their current behavior will be encouraged. A foreign agent here would need only encourage you to do what you have been doing all along, for practical reasons, to maintain wealth and power, to maintain your nation's stability, and to maintain its predominance over other nations. These agents will provide this advice to your leaders, and especially to the leaders in commerce, who always will seek profit and advantage. Since the intervention represents commercial forces, they are particularly focused on aligning themselves with human commercial forces in your world. Here, they share a common purpose and many common methods, and they can appeal to individuals who have the focus and the intent. Who amongst the powerful and the elite in your commerce and trade within this world could refuse the offer of advanced technology and refuse the offer of proprietary rights to something that none of their rivals possesses? Who could refuse the opportunity to engage in trade and commerce with powerful forces beyond this world? Leaders in commerce are not accountable to the public, to the people of your world. They are not scrutinized. Their positions are secure. They do not need to win public favor in order to proceed in their search for power. Who amongst them will refuse the offers of advanced technology and trade with other nations and the wealth, power, and advantage that such engagements might promise? Even your religious leaders will be encouraged to align themselves with the intervention. They will be encouraged to believe that the intervention represents advanced life forms, morally and ethically advanced, beyond anything that humanity has established, and that humanity must turn to them now for inspiration and for guidance. These religious leaders will be led to believe that the intervention is here as an act of providence, an act of God, to safeguard humanity and to assure its future. It is their beliefs and their emphasis that will be exploited here, for they are not able to see clearly and discern the meaning and the reality of the greater community. Amongst those who are rebellious and who seek to foster revolution, the intervention will give them inspiration. It can whisper in their minds. It can present images in front of them, images of their saints, images of their gods, images of the righteousness of their cause. These individuals who cannot distinguish a greater community presence from a spiritual manifestation will not be able to resist. Now they will feel they have divine will and support for their political goals. Now they will feel justified in taking any action, no matter how destructive, in order to fulfill their beliefs and their sense of justice. None of these inspirations comes from a divine source, for the creator of the universe would never support human conflict, or a conflicted race of beings living in a beautiful world that is valued by others. This conflict represents a critical advantage to an intervening force. Here, a much smaller force can overwhelm a much greater force. The collectives are a very small presence in the world, and yet they can have great advantage here, encouraging governments to take actions not in their best interest and encouraging conflicts that will only lead both sides to a greater decline and impoverishment. They can promote the use of the world's resources in such a way that would only lead to humanity's decline and the collapse of societies, and even civilization itself. The intervention is exploiting your weakness, and that is why you must cultivate your strength. You must see that your predispositions towards conflict and division are inherently self-destructive, and render your position weak and vulnerable in the face of the greater community. Human unity and cooperation will be essential for humanity's future if you are to remain and to grow as a free race of peoples in the universe. The intervention will oppose this, for that will counter its goals and even its presence here in the world. Regarding the issue of discretion, the intervention wants to know everything about you, how to govern your views, how to motivate your feelings, how to stimulate your emotions, how to make you behave in the ways that it wants you to behave. For control of the human mind and perception is essential to its ultimate goals of governance in this world. Human discretion, therefore, runs counter to the intervention's objectives and will be discouraged. Only in keeping the intervention's secrets will humanity's discretion be supported. Only in hiding its agenda and forgetting what individuals have been told and the often brutal experiments that they have been subjected to as they were taken from their homes and their families against their will, Here, forgetfulness will be encouraged, even with threats of violence. The intervention does not want the human population to know its real activities and its real intent. It does not want to see humanity become more powerful. It does not want to see humanity gain insulation from the greater community. For the intervention is here to establish dependence and cooperation. This is their pathway to success, a pathway that is not being sufficiently resisted within your own world. The power of knowledge is the sacred intelligence placed within each individual. The power of knowledge is unknown to the intervention, for if it were known, there would be no intervention, and such unethical behavior would not be attempted. The greater powers of humanity are not being used, and humanity is being encouraged to behave in ways that are not in its best interest. While it is true that humanity could commit all of its errors on its own, to have the support of the intervention only makes the hazards greater. This is being done in a completely hidden way. The intervention will present itself to its believers and its advocates as a benign and spiritual force. In reality, it will be supporting the very forces that undermine humanity's integrity, its unity, and its self-confidence. The intervention will undermine people's belief and confidence in their leaders and their institutions, thus fostering a vacuum of confidence that can easily be shifted to a foreign power that is presenting itself as a benign and advanced race. This is the nature of deception that is placed upon a weak and divided humanity, a deception generated by several competing groups of economic collectives who seek to have advantage here. Such activities and deception have been used by humanity as well, so these are understandable to you. Technology only aids the intervention in remaining hidden and giving it certain powers over people's physical response to their presence. It is the power of persuasion in the mental environment, the power of making people think what the intervention wants them to think, to feel what the intervention wants them to feel, and to do what the intervention wants them to do, that represents its greatest strength and advantage here. The intervention cannot use force, and it is not a military presence, so it does not have this capability. It will use its greatest strength, which is the power of persuasion, and it is using this to great effect. It has not won its objective yet. It has not achieved its goals yet. But every day the intervention grows stronger. Every day its influence becomes more pervasive. Every day its effort to pacify human resistance and to direct human activity increases. For it seeks to pacify those who would resist it and to encourage human conflict at the same time. The intervention is here to encourage the loss of faith in human leadership and human institutions. It is here to strengthen its presence as the saviors of humanity. Whether the reins of power would be given to it publicly, invisibly, or whether it would occur behind the scenes, the intervention needs tremendous human assistance and support. It must do this to satisfy those who are watching its presence here from afar, and it must do this to gain ascendancy in the world without destroying the world's resources or endangering their ultimate goals here. You have the power to resist this. You have the power to resist this and many other forms of intrusion that will be attempted in the future. Humanity does not know its own strength, and that is why it is so vulnerable. Humanity does not recognize its advantage in living in a highly populated region of space where military conquest is not allowed and where war and violence are rare. You do not realize the advantage this gives you. If you raise your voice against the intervention, it is put at risk. If you oppose the intervention, if enough people can do this, the intervention must withdraw. To know more, visit alliesofhumanity.org and newmessage.org.